10 of the most scandalous and shocking misconceptions in American history. American history is rife with misunderstood events and widely believed falsehoods that have shaped public perception. These misconceptions have often led to shocking realizations when the truth has surfaced. From the misinterpretation of major events to the overlooked details that change common understandings, this video explores 10 of the most scandalous and astonishing historical myths in American history. Number 1. The Wild West, more order than chaos. The Wild West conjures images of lawlessness and constant gunfights, thanks to Hollywood's dramatizations. In reality, towns like Dodge City, Kansas, and Tombstone, Arizona, had established law enforcement that maintained order more effectively than is popularly portrayed. Dodge City, for instance, from 1876 to 1885, recorded only about 1.5 homicides per year, a figure not unusual for American cities at the time. The famous gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone, which lasted just 30 seconds and resulted in 3 deaths, was an anomaly rather than the norm. These towns had stringent gun control laws. For example, in Dodge City, carrying firearms was banned in the town center. This lawfulness facilitated their economic functions as critical hubs for cattle drives and later, as popular stops along railroad expansions. Number 2. Salem Witch Trials, Economic and Personal Vendettas. The Salem Witch Trials, a dark chapter in American history, unfolded over several months in 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts. This period of mass hysteria led to the accusation of over 200 individuals, resulting in the execution of 20 people, including 14 women and 6 men. These events were less about the fear of witchcraft and more about the complex interplay of economic envy, personal vendettas, and the stresses of a Puritan society facing several internal and external pressures. The afflicted were often in positions of social or economic rivalry with their accusers. For instance, many of the accused, such as Sarah Good, were from lower social strata or had contentious relationships within the community. The trials began after the bizarre behaviors of Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, who were the first to accuse others, leading to a cascade of accusations and hysteria. The trials concluded by May 1693, but the aftermath left Salem and its surrounding areas in a state of social and psychological upheaval, reflecting the dangers of mass paranoia and the vulnerability of societal cohesion under strain. Number 3. Paul Revere's Ride, a group effort, not a solo ride. The legendary midnight ride of Paul Revere on the night of April 18, 1775, has been immortalized as a symbol of American patriotism and resilience, largely due to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's 1860 poem, Paul Revere's Ride. However, contrary to the popular narrative of Revere's lone heroic endeavor, his ride was part of a larger network of alarm and mobilization against the British forces' advance. Revere was accompanied by William Dawes, who set out from Boston by a different route, and they were later joined by Dr. Samuel Prescott. Prescott was the only one of the trio who actually made it to Concord to deliver the warning, as Revere was captured by British troops near Lexington, though he was later released, and Dawes lost his way. This collective effort highlights the collaborative nature of the American resistance against British rule and underscores the inaccuracies in the heroization of historical figures based on oversimplified narratives. Number 4. The First Thanksgiving, not just friendly pilgrims and Native Americans. The event commonly referred to as the First Thanksgiving was held in November 1621 and involved the Pilgrims who had settled Plymouth Colony and members of the Wampanoag tribe. This feast, which lasted 3 days, saw the participation of about 50 Pilgrims and 90 Native Americans, including the Wampanoag leader Massasoit. The traditional narrative suggests a peaceful celebration of harvest and cooperation, but the reality was far more complex and strategic. This gathering was as much about political alliance and mutual benefit as it was about giving thanks. The Pilgrims, grateful for their first successful harvest, were equally intent on solidifying a strategic alliance with the Wampanoags to secure their settlement's safety. On the other hand, Massasoit and his men sought to establish their position against rival tribes. The 1621 feast included not just sharing of food but also demonstrations of military strength, with shooting contests and other martial displays. The sanitized story of a harmonious feast serves later colonial and United States narratives aiming to create a foundation myth centered on cooperation and Thanksgiving, obscuring the realpolitik and tensions of early colonial interactions. Number 5. Emancipation Proclamation, limited immediate effect. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, during the height of the American Civil War. Contrary to popular belief, this executive order did not immediately free all enslaved people but specifically targeted those in Confederate states not under Union control. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within these rebellious states are, and henceforward shall be free, strategically turning the war into a fight against slavery and aiming to prevent European nations from aiding the Confederacy. However, it exempted enslaved people in border states and other areas already under Union control, leaving over 800,000 of the 3.1 million slaves in the country at that time in bondage. The actual liberation for most enslaved people would only occur with the Confederate surrender and the ratification of the 13th Amendment on December 6, 1865, which abolished slavery entirely. The proclamation also permitted the recruitment of African Americans into the Union Army, significantly bolstering the North's manpower and moral cause in the continuing conflict. Number 6. Benjamin Franklin's Kite Experiment. The famous kite experiment attributed to Benjamin Franklin took place in June 1752 and is often mistakenly cited as the moment electricity was discovered. In reality, Franklin was building on known concepts of electricity to prove that lightning was a form of electrical energy. He conducted the experiment during a Philadelphia thunderstorm, flying a silk kite with a key attached to the string, standing in a barn doorway to keep dry. When Franklin observed sparks jumping from the key to his hand, he concluded that lightning is electrical. This experiment significantly advanced the understanding of electricity's properties and led to the invention of the lightning rod, a device that protects buildings from lightning damage. Franklin's careful approach to the experiment and its implications played a crucial role in the development of electrical science, debunking the myth that he discovered electricity and instead highlighting his role in demonstrating its nature and potential applications. Number 7. The Black Legend, exaggeration of Spanish atrocities. The Black Legend, or La Leyenda Negra, emerged in the 16th century as a powerful narrative concocted primarily by Spain's European rivals, notably England and the Netherlands. These stories painted the Spanish Empire as engaging in brutal and unprecedented atrocities against the Native Americans during their colonial ventures in the New World. This narrative was significantly bolstered by works such as Bartolomé de las Casas, a short account of the destruction of the Indies, published in 1552, which detailed horrific acts of violence and enslavement by the Spanish conquistadors. Although de las Casas accounts were based on real events, his descriptions were often sensationalized and used politically by other European powers to demonize Spain, thereby obscuring their own colonial brutalities. The Black Legend served not only to vilify Spain but also to justify the colonial ambitions of its European rivals by portraying them as more humane colonizers in comparison. Number 8. The Roswell UFO Incident, a Cold War misinterpretation. In July 1947, something crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, initially described by the local Army airfield as a flying disc. This quickly captured the public's imagination as a crashed alien spacecraft, especially during a time when Cold War anxieties about technology and spying were rampant. However, the U.S. military soon clarified that the debris was from a crashed weather balloon, part of the top-secret Project Mogul, which aimed to detect Soviet nuclear tests from high-altitude balloons. Despite the military's clarification, the incident seeded long-lasting UFO conspiracy theories and allegations of a government cover-up, reflecting the era's deep-seated fears of government secrecy and advanced technology. Number 9. Gulf of Tonkin Incident, false justification for war escalation. The Gulf of Tonkin Incident is a critical example of misinformation leading to major military escalation. On August 2, 1964, the USS Maddox, a U.S. Navy destroyer, engaged 3 North Vietnamese Navy torpedo boats, resulting in an exchange of fire under disputed circumstances. A subsequent reported attack on August 4, involving the USS Maddox and the USS Turner Joy, was later revealed to be mistaken, with no North Vietnamese forces present during the claimed engagement. This second, non-existent attack prompted the U.S. Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution on August 7, 1964, which granted President Lyndon B. Johnson the authority to assist any Southeast Asian country whose government was considered to be jeopardized by communist aggression. This led directly to the escalation of the Vietnam War, highlighting how pivotal yet flawed intelligence was in shaping U.S. military actions. Number 10. The Zoot Suit Riots, Racial Tensions and Misrepresentations. The Zoot Suit Riots, which took place in Los Angeles in June 1943, were marked by a series of violent clashes between U.S. servicemen and Mexican-American youths dressed in zoot suits, exaggerated high-waisted, wide-legged, tight-cuffed trousers, and long coats that were fashionable among certain minority groups at the time. Initially spurred by minor conflicts, the situation escalated into full-blown racial attacks that reflected the larger racial tensions in the U.S. during World War II. The media predominantly portrayed the zoot suit wearers as juvenile delinquents, further stigmatizing the Mexican-American community. The riots lasted for days, with police mostly arresting the Mexican-American youths instead of the servicemen involved in the assaults. This event underscored the discrimination faced by Mexican Americans and catalyzed the Chicano movement, fostering a greater awareness and political activism within the community.